Up next Monday. Up next Monday.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order on September 23rd, 2021 at about 6:04 p.m. I will take a roll call. Alan?
Here.
And Pat?
Here.
Ed?
Here.
Mike?
Here.
And Sheila's here. Good evening. This is a virtual Board of Selectmen meeting. We are using the Zoom conferencing format. If you wish to make a public comment and speak on an agenda item, please use the raise your hand feature on your device. The moderator will be notified and will unmute you. Please identify yourself before making a comment. The webinar ID is 827-234-67118.
Hey, does anybody else's screen say we're in a practice session, by the way?
No.
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Maybe it's just this tablet.
Okay. Number 2, approve the September 9th Selectmen meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All right. And I will take a roll call. Pat?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
And Sheila says aye. Item 3, public forum. This is an opportunity for anyone who wants to address the Board of Selectmen with any issue that's not on the agenda. Do we have any hands?
And can we just have Werner address the Growth Planning Committee has a workshop coming up?
Sure. So good evening, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and share screen here. So just like everybody to know, Growth Planning Committee on this upcoming Monday will be hosting a future land use work session discussion over Zoom. The agenda can be found on the on the comprehensive plan website. And so we certainly welcome as many folks to attend this meeting as would like. It's going to be a good opportunity to talk a little bit about the future land use questions that we have going on here in Kennebunkport. Topics will include uses for zoning districts, residential development and trends, and things of that nature. So feel free to join us, and we'll be sending out another e-subscriber notification on Friday for this. But in the meantime, you can see the agenda on the comprehensive plan website.
And can you remind people what that website is?
Sure. So if folks go to the town website, so that's the kennebunkportme.gov, and then there's a tab that takes you directly there that says it's the Comprehensive Plan 2030 tab.
And it is, but there's a separate website set up that's Kennebunkport CP for comprehensive plan, kennebunkportcp.info.
Correct.
Thank you very much, Werner.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Werner. That was, we're on to number 4, public hearing to adopt the MMA model.
Okay, go ahead.
Did I miss something?
No, I was going to have Allison talk about.
Oh, I thought she was going to do it during her.
She can do either, whatever pleases the chair.
She can do it during
I never heard that one before.
Public hearing to adopt the MMA model ordinance GA appendices A through F for the period October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022. So Allison, please.
All righty. Good evening, everyone. I just had a little electricity blip or something, and I thought I was going to miss the meeting, but I'm out here in the boondocks. So anyway, good evening. I'm Allison Kenaway, the Director of Public Health for the town of Kennebunkport, and one of my jobs is the administrator of the state-mandated general assistance program for the town. And every year we analyze the town in each county to determine the maximum amount of assistance a person can qualify for those who have minimal income and assets and using fair market rental value in the towns. As mandated by the state, the Kennebunkport votes yearly to accept these maximums set by the state. The overall maximums, I think you guys all got a packet of the maximums. Okay. The overall maximums for individual families in Appendix A, the food and housing allowances in Appendix B and C all increased for the year 2021 and 22 over last year. And the maximums from Appendix D through F, or the basic needs, have not changed from last year. And what basic needs cover through general assistance are utilities, electricity, heating fuel, along with personal care items and household supplies. In 2020, we had 18 application requests for general assistance, and only one actually qualified for rental assistance. And we do continue to have people in our town who do need assistance, but do not qualify for the state general assistance through the state. Though with our outreach services, we can meet a lot of their needs. We have community outreach services, community harvest in Kennebunk, and they serve the 3 towns. And they both have special needs accounts for those who don't meet general assistance through the state. They all get these referrals through the 3 general assistance offices, though. So everyone goes through the process, and then if they don't meet the state requirements, we can refer them elsewhere. We also have a general needs account through the town of Kennebunkport that we can help people here, and we review everyone's requests and make decisions with that. Community Outreach Services runs the food pantry for the community. And this fall, we had the Kennebunk Rotary has a program called CS3, which stands for three Communities Strong. And they provided school children with back-to-school clothing and shoes. And we had 5 students from our town that participated in this service. We have Secret Santa, and in 2020, we had 4 families that participated in Secret Santa. And then we have a back-to-school backpack program with Health Council here in town. And we had 5 backpacks provided to school children in need with gift cards to Staples for back-to-school supplies. So last fall in 2020, Community Outreach Services kind of revamped how they processed people through their food pantry. And so they've really upgraded and they've done a great job. They have an online service, and for those who don't know how to do online, they have a dial-in phone service. But they don't need to come through the general assistance offices anymore to request food pantry items. So they can go directly to Community Outreach Services. So that unfortunately has been a little bit of a problem for the general assistance of our 3 town communities, because we kind of feel like we're losing track of who's requesting these food items and who's requesting needs, because they're just doing it directly to Community Outreach Service. And at this time, they are working on trying to figure out a program that they can get back to us, some of the families that are requesting for assistance, so that we can help them in other ways. But at this time, I usually tell you a list of how many people requested food boxes and how many gift cards of food we gave out, but I don't have that list to tell you tonight exactly. But it's in the process. We have been meeting with COS to continue to get that list with them, so that will come eventually. And then we also have the fuel assistance program here in town, and in 2020, we have fuel consists of oil, K1, propane, electricity, cordwood, and pellets. And for the 2020-2021 year, we assisted 13 families, totaling $3,078.23. Are there any questions with that?
Allison, how does somebody get approved for these? I know that the state's involved, but are you involved as well?
So I help the individuals or the families. There's a kind of a extensive application to fill out, and it asks about their assets, their income, their debt, some of their bills that they have. And there's a formula that you go through and then make a decision if they qualify. And it's all determined by the state for the general assistance. And
how long from an application to the help they get the help?
It's I have to give them an answer within 24 hours of receiving the application if they're going to qualify and receive assistance.
That's pretty quick.
Right.
It is quick.
Quick, yeah.
Yeah, for the
And then we submit reimbursement from the state for the town, a partial.
For the Secret Santa this year, is it going to be a combination of the three towns, or how are you?
It's always been the three towns, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I think we have wonderful programs. I think we have, we're a very lucky town.
Yes.
Allison, the only question I have is you talked about the fuel assistance, and what did you say? You expended about $3,000.
Yes.
We received, if I'm not mistaken, a significant amount in excess of that. So we still have some for this winter.
Oh, yes. Yes,
Good.
we do. Yes.
And you handle that. That's not a state program, correct?
Right. They call to my office directly. Yes.
And the decisions are made right here in town.
Yes.
Good.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I would say the majority of people that we help, Allison uses other local resources and not the state GA program. We
Right.
don't really get much reimbursement because most people don't qualify for the state program. But we fortunately have a number of programs layered on top of that Allison is able to access.
It's wonderful.
Right.
Do you want to speak about the test kits now?
Sure.
No. So listen, we
We have
gotta
a public hearing.
close the public hearing and then vote on it first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Close the public hearing and we'll vote on the MMA ordinance.
Yeah, I move that we adopt MMA ordinance, model ordinance GA appendices A through F for the period of 1 October 2021 to 30 September 2022.
Second.
Second.
All right, take a roll. Pat,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. Pass. So Allison, now you can.
Now, okay, so you all know that we are continuing to provide COVID testing to our community and local businesses. And with this Delta variant that we have seen, it is there's been a large uptick in testing, and the schools have gone back, and there's been a lot of testing, a lot of COVID kind of in the area. The hospitals, as you've probably heard, are getting overrun. So it's lots of people requesting tests. So we have been right along been able to get test kits for testing until just recently. Everything is back ordered. So we are running very low on test kits. We have orders in, and we also have to put out a new contract for the next upcoming year, which is in the works. With Abbott Laboratories to get more test kits for our machine. So I don't have an answer of how soon we'll get more test kits, but we're running down. We have about 113 left at the moment. And recently we've been getting about 10, at least about 10 testing a day. So I think I have 2 to 3 weeks of testing left.
What's the turnaround on the results?
For our kits, it's 15 minutes.
Oh, wow, nice.
So we wanted the selectmen to be aware because over the past year, Allison and her staff have done about 1,000 tests. And we started, what did you say, October 30th of 2020?
Correct.
So we're about a month away from her anniversary. And we did use some state grant money. We used some FEMA reimbursement, and we used some tax dollars last year for testing. This year, going into the budget, we thought things were going to get better. And so we budgeted $5,000 back in March when we came to the budget process for this fiscal year. The selectmen also approved at the end of the fiscal year an additional $10,000 carry forward from Allison's budget. So we had 15 total. And you have to buy the tests in kits. And we get 24 tests in a kit, right, Allison?
Yes.
And the kit is just shy of $1,000. So we were very open to testing last year from anybody in the RSU. We helped with York County, public safety officials, et cetera, because we did get some of our tests through grant money and through the local EMA office, et cetera. When it was going to the test kits were all coming from property tax dollars, we really honed in on just the businesses and residents of Kennebunkport. So some school people have, in other communities, have had a desire to get tested by us because testing is a challenge right now, finding a place to give you a test. And certainly being able to get one that gives you a quick turnaround is really challenging. And kids can't go back to school without a test. And staff and employees can't go back. But unfortunately, the Delta variant has amped things up, and quickly the turnaround on availability of test kits has changed dramatically. We also were kind of running out, and we made a decision this past week, Allison and I, to sign a contract, because without a contract, we can't order more, for 20 test kits over the next year, which is about $20,000. So remember, we had budgeted 5. We carried forward 10. We do ask for a $25 on tests, even though the test cost us $41. And so we do generate a little revenue to help offset that. Our goal is, of course, that we don't need to use any, but we did have to make that commitment. And so Allison and I are doing our best to provide for the community, but understand that these test kits, we don't have any idea when they're going to show up.
Allison,
Lori, go ahead, Sheila.
do you, are there any limitations on who can be tested? I mean, when they come to you, are they already ill, or they think they're going to be sick, or they're just wondering if they have it?
So we asked them a lot of questions, but mostly we're focused on, did you have an exposure to COVID from like in your home or in your work or in the school, or are you having symptoms? So if they're having symptoms of COVID, then yes, they qualify. If they've had an exposure to COVID, then they qualify. And they also were asking, right now it's town residents or part of a business that's in town in Lower Village. If they're looking to travel or go to a concert or just curious if they have it, right now we're not really testing them. We're targeting them to CVS, Walgreens, because we just don't have the kits available.
All right. Now, I have a question. If you've been exposed to it, how many days is it normally before you show symptoms? I mean, if you're tested like the day after and you come out non-COVID, that's kind of a waste.
So it's a little different. If you're vaccinated, the CDC is recommending if you've had an exposure that you wait about 3 to 5 days to be tested.
Okay.
If you're unvaccinated, they're recommending that you get tested right away and then repeat that test again in about 5 to 7 days. Because that first one might be early, but.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right.
Okay.
Allison, you allowed to tell us what percentage positive we had out of the 1,000?
Oh, I'm not prepared. I don't have that number, but
Okay, all right. No, just
definitely, there's more negatives than positives here in town. But I will say recently, in the past couple of weeks, I've been seeing a lot more positives.
Oh, well. And so are you people fully protected when you're?
Yes.
Okay.
And we do randomly screen ourselves just to be sure, because we are coming in contact with it all the time.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. That's good.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you very much, Allison, for updating.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Allison.
All right, number 6, appoint Elizabeth Johnson to the Growth Planning Committee.
No, number 5, you skipped
Oh, I'm
Denise
sorry.
Brown.
Sorry. Appoint Denise Brown as treasurer. Lori?
We can appoint Elizabeth Johnson as treasurer, but you might not like that.
So I have Denise Brown in the attendees, and I'm going to ask if they can bring her up to panelist as we say goodbye to Allison.
Hi, Allison.
Thank you, Dave. There's Denise. So Denise is a lifelong Maine resident. She has 35 years of municipal experience. She's currently serving as the city finance director in Gardner, and before that she was in the city of Auburn. She has a very can-do attitude, great team player, and we are very blessed that she decided to come to Kennebunkport. But I'll let Denise say a few words about herself.
Thank you, Lori. You're too kind. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Denise Brown. I come to you with 35 years of municipal finance experience. My passion is all things numbers. It's always been my love. And I have the highest regard for municipal servancy. I believe once a municipal servant, always a municipal servant. I really look forward to coming to Kennebunkport. And forgive me over the next few months if I say city instead of town. I've always worked for a city, so forgive me. I look forward to meeting all of you in person, and my office will be open, and I will be willing to speak with any one of you anytime. So I'm very excited.
Great. Well, Lori is very excited to have you on board.
I bet.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we appoint Denise Brown as the treasurer of the town of Kennebunkport.
Okay.
All right, taking roll call. Pat?
Aye.
And Ed?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
And Sheila says aye. Welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Denise. We look forward to seeing you Tuesday.
I'll be there. I'll find my way.
All right, that's 5. Now we're on to 6. Appoint Elizabeth Johnson to the Growth Planning Committee.
And Liz Johnson is in the audience. Dave, do you want to let her talk?
Hi, am I there?
Yes.
Do you see me live or just hear me?
We can hear you.
We see your picture, but we can't see a live video, but that's okay.
Okay. Hi, Liz Johnson. Thank you for allowing me to be on the Growth and Planning Committee. I've lived in Kennebunkport 13 years now, 4 kids through the school system. My youngest is in 8th grade. And we love it here. And in my 13 years, I've watched a lot of growth in the town. And I just want to be part of that to make sure that it benefits everybody in a way that is best for the town and best for the people who live here. So thank you.
Thank you for your interest in serving.
You're right. I do. That would not be a good plan if I were the treasurer, That would
Yeah,
help.
no, me either, Liz. Me either.
And some of you may have had surgery by my husband, David Johnson, orthopedics. Let's hope not.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Take that into
Thanks for
consideration.
having me.
Sheila, I'd like to motion that we appoint Liz Johnson to the Growth Planning Committee with a term. Lori, what's the term?
Yeah, on July 2022.
Yes, July 2022. Thank you, Lori.
Second.
Second. And we will take the roll. Pat,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
and Sheila says aye. Thank you, Liz. Award bid for wastewater dewatering equipment evaluation, selection, and bid administration. So I think we have Eric and Chris.
Yes, Eric and Chris are here.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, good evening. Hey there. Sorry.
All right, here we go.
So Eric, do you want to give people an overview from last time we met?
Yeah, so there were some concerns about some of the assumptions that were made. And so we went back to the actual, we went back to the firm and spoke with them about those assumptions. In part, it had to do with, I think the assumptions were placed in there because we had a lot of conversation beforehand, before the proposal was already written. However, they were very comfortable about removing those assumptions. So we've asked them to remove those assumptions out of the actual proposal, and they've resubmitted. They've left, I believe, two assumptions in there that we're comfortable with, and however, they've removed a lot of that language. And so really, we're recommending at this point that Wood and Curran be awarded. They're within our budget as well, which is actually something that was important as well. So,
Mike, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Chris and Eric. I went down and spent some time down at the treatment plant with them, and we went over almost all of these items. And I was happy to find out that most of the things that were in the language that said assumed were actually fact. So if you read it again now, the language, there are one or two things in there that's still to be determined, but the rest of it has been taken care of. And I think it was just, I was really, really pleasantly pleased when I talked to both Eric and Chris and found out that all these things had already been determined. And it was just a language, for the most part, just a language thing, which I don't like to see in an agreement. I don't like to see the word assume, and because it gives too many outs. And they had they changed, and Wood and Curran agreed to change it, and I'm happy with it. And I would hope that the rest of you are as well.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot cleaner for sure.
It was a lot cleaner.
And I'm glad, Mike, that you brought that up at the last meeting, and they did a really good job straightening it out, and I'm all for it. And I'll make a motion to award the bid for wastewater dewatering equipment to Woodard and Curran for an amount of $139,000.
I'll second that.
Very good. We'll take a roll, and that would be Pat,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Alan.
Aye.
Sheila says aye. Thank you for the extra work. Thank you for the work that you did.
Absolutely.
Very good. We're on to number 8, adoption of short-term rental rules, regulations, and fees. I think the first one we'll do is have discussion on the fees. Warner, do you have anything to say first?
No, I don't have anything specific relative to the fees to discuss. I can tell you we've been working diligently with host compliance on pulling together the information that's necessary and running through some of the testing on what I would say is the in-house side of the website. To make sure that the data and everything is lining up. So that's been moving along pretty well with them at this point. We've also gotten a fair number of questions from folks that we've been putting together answers to, some of the finer points, in terms of, expectations for documentation, things like that. Questions that you can't necessarily anticipate when you create an ordinance. And so we're working through those items now. And some of those questions we'll be taking and updating the Q&A page here shortly with.
All right. Well, let's discuss first the fees. Does anybody want to step in?
Well, I looked at them, Sheila, and, given that we don't know, well, first of all, let's go through the fees that were arranged here if people are following at home. For fee scenario A, we had $250 and $500 for fee, fee scenario B, we had $325 and $575. And then for the scenario number 3, we were looking at $500 and $700. Given that we don't know how many licenses we're going to issue, and for each license that we issue, there will be a cost to the town. I like the second scenario, where it should guarantee that we would bring in enough income to cover all the expenses that the town will have. That way the general taxpayers will not have to bear burden to this. And next year when we set the fees, we'll have a number. We're still operating here without all the facts, which we can't have until we have a license and system in place. So we're kind of chicken and egg here. But I think that tier 1 at $325, i.e., 1 to 3 bedrooms, and then tier 2 4+ bedrooms at $575 is both fair and should give us the income that we need in order so that this program pays for itself. In the future, I don't envision this as the fee structure that is going to make the town money. That was never my assumption of this, but I don't want it to cost the town money either.
I agree with you, Ed. I think that scenario B is the right way to go, especially for the first year, because there's so many unknowns. We'll have a better idea the following year, just exactly where we're at. So I happen to agree with you.
I also agree with you, Alan. I think that is the most realistic approach at this point.
Very good. Mike, do you have anything?
Yep, no, I'm in agreement.
Okay, good.
Then I make a motion that we adopt fee scenario B, tier 1. It says 0, but it probably should say 1 to 3 bedrooms, but will be charged $325 for a license. And tier 2, which would be 4+ bedrooms, will be charged $575 for the year 2022.
I'll second that.
So just so you know, you do have a hand up in the audience.
Oh. Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to speak. But secondly, I want to raise a concern, if I'm allowed.
Sure.
Yes.
I happen to be co-owner of a short-term rental. And essentially, the plan you just described, while already penalizing short-term rental owners by regulating them and requiring licensing fees in the first place without representation or being allowed to vote on the ordinance that was passed against them, you're now requiring them to pay an even higher fee for not having done the research in the first place to find out how many rentals there are and how much this was going to cost the town. So you're now penalizing them further because you didn't go and do the research first.
If you could point me to the research, I'd be happy to do it. But there is no data that exists that gives us a finite number of all the rentals. We went through this extensively last winter when we discussed this ordinance.
Right, and that would be why it would have had to be done and before all this was passed, which was one of the concerns that I and other owners raised before the ordinance was passed, but it was dismissed.
But my question is,
wasn't
where is
dismissed. It was voted on by the voters of the town. The ordinance was passed by the voters of the town. Nothing was dismissed. It was discussed, and then the ordinance was made and it was voted on.
Again, it was voted on by people it doesn't necessarily affect.
It was voted on by the voters of the town of Kennebunkport, who it does affect.
But if they're not required to pay for it, how does it affect them?
Because a lot of the neighborhoods are or should be residential, which to me means no business in the area, but it still goes on. And even if you're not renting your property, you are, you have to experience the fact that a lot of the times your neighbors are not your neighbors. They're somebody who's here for a week, or they have 15 bicycles in their yard, or there's a party on Saturday night. So it affects everybody in the town.
When I said that that the residents or the taxpayers, that it shouldn't affect them, is what I'm saying is that anybody who doesn't have a short-term rental license should not bear the cost of the regulatory system here in the town.
Which I understand to an extent. I'm not arguing that. What I'm arguing is that you're asking this year's crop of short-term renters, which you've made guinea pigs, essentially, to bear the burden of that, more than the burden of that cost, just because you didn't go and do research first.
What research?
To find out how many short-term
you say research, but there is no place to go to find all of these numbers. I don't know if you came to some of these meetings.
I did.
But then you know that we do not know how many people rent short term. And that is part of the reason we are having a licensing system.
Which, again, I'm aware that was an issue. I'm not trying to deny that. And I'm not.
But you say research, and I appreciate the fact that you speak to us. But one thing that I ask of people when they come and talk is, have your facts correct when you come and ask us questions and then accuse us of doing something that you obviously don't like because it affects you and it's going to cost you money. And
sure.
And I get it. I've been regulated to death in my own industry. But when I ask people why they do things, I'd like to know that there is an answer to it. And some things there just aren't answers to.
Lauren, you probably have a very nice rental, maybe in a nice quiet neighborhood. Maybe you're the only one on the street that's renting. But what has happened is we feel and we can see that's not the way it is in a lot of areas in the town. We're seeing more and more and more rentals, and it's affecting the town tax-wise. It's affecting the town in our educational system. So we felt and feel that we have an obligation to the town to come up with some kind of a solution.
I understand that, and I'm not trying to argue against the short-term rentals at this point. I apologize if that was the way it came off. I understand you're trying to do what you have to do to protect the town. My only concern is that you've artificially raised licensing fees for the first year based on, well, nothing.
We haven't artificially raised anything because there was no fee set. That is the entire crux of this conversation is to set a fee. So we haven't raised anything because nothing exists. So therefore we cannot raise anything because there's no standard set. Tonight will be the fee. So if next year, if we charged people $350, then you could legitimately say we raised the fees. But next year we will know with almost, absolute certainty how many licenses will be issued and how much it will cost.
Okay, well, maybe raised wasn't the best word to use there, but I'm not trying to argue against the licensing at this point. As you've pointed out, it's a duly voted on ordinance. My only concern is that the rate at which you're charging people, without any way of knowing, apparently, how much money it's actually going to cost to cover it. What is going to happen if there's surplus money? Does that money just go back to the town? Is there going to be a rebate for people?
It could be, Lauren, that if there's surplus money, next year the license will be $300 instead of $325 or $250.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not my intent to make money off of the short-term rental people, but it is our intent that it will cover its cost, and then we need to have a little as a cushion. Anybody who runs a business wants to have a little bit of a cushion there, but
sure.
not. We're certainly not here to shake you down for money. That's not my intent, and I don't believe that's any of the other 4 members of this board's intent either.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you. I think there was one other hand up. Okay.
Hello, Board of Kennebunkport. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Good. So, grown up in town, and I just have a few questions with regard to this new ordinance. And I'm going to say them both first so that I don't forget. My first one is, why are we rushing into doing this before we have all the necessary information and research it? Because I do believe that there are several communities, not only in Maine, but outside of Maine, that we could use as resources for this information. That's my first question. My second question is, with that in mind, has there been any research on the impact of the real estate in our community moving forward when such a decision is made? I feel like this is being shoved quickly through the system before all the information is in front of you. And I think that is a really bad way to go about anything. So that I'm just concerned.
You and I have a long history. We grew up together. We've seen a lot of changes in our life, correct?
Yes, sir.
Here in town. Yes. And I think your first question, I think that was just a restatement of what the first lady asked us. So I won't go into that. But we have had the most open public discussion about short-term rentals or about any ordinance in the history of Kennebunkport, because these meetings were all conducted via Zoom, and we had as many as I don't even know. We had over 50 participants at a lot of them. I want to say we had 70 at one, but so we certainly have put a great deal of time and effort into this. And I have the feeling that if we took 10 years to have completed this, there would be people out in the populace who this affects who would say we rushed it. So I think that the board has done its due diligence. The voters have spoken, and this now is settled, and we need to move on and make it a reality. As far as the real estate goes, I think what it's going to do is people aren't going to be able to buy homes outside of Goose Rock's area and rent them out. So yeah, it will have an effect on that. But I would say that what about the people who want to live here and they can't afford a house because somebody's going to have their ownership subsidized by running it as a business? Whereas if I buy a house and I want to live in it, I don't get that subsidy. So, like you, I have a real estate license, and I don't believe that the residents of Kennebunkport have any obligation to subsidize ownership of residential property. And I think that this ordinance speaks to that clearly.
Does anybody else have a response to my questions? Thank you, Ed.
You're welcome, Jess, and I'm always available to speak to you anytime. I know you have my number.
I do.
I can tell you this much on how I feel. And we've spent many, many, many days, nights, weeks, and months on this. And we brought it to the voters, and the voters voted it in. And now it's our turn. It's our time to go ahead and implement this. And we're going to do that. And I know it does not make anybody happy that has a short-term rental. But I don't know of too many businesses that are in business that doesn't have some sort of a license. And we need to know how many short-term rentals there are in this town, and we need to go ahead and watch over them to make sure everything is good. And I'm all for this. The town was for it. It was voted in, and we're going to move on with it.
I'd like to say one other thing. This isn't all bad for the folks who are, running short-term rentals and will have to apply for these licenses, because now once we issue you a license, you have standing, because the five of us are not going to be on this board forever. It's not my intention to be on this board for eternity or the time that I live in this town. So it is conceivable that a future board could simply come along and say, no, we don't want short-term rentals, and get it passed. And then everybody who is renting will be completely out in the cold. But now that this ordinance is passed and people will be issued licenses, you have stead. You may have liked the laissez-faire approach that the town took better, but now you have some protections. Whether you choose to believe me or not, I think someday, it may come to pass that you're glad you have a license.
Well,
go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say, can you refresh my memory on how many licenses you're going to be handing out, or is that to be determined?
We don't know. We really don't, Jess.
That's why
Right.
we're doing activity.
Because somebody could, in theory, still qualify for a license. I believe, and we may discuss this a little later, but if you started renting today and rented for 2 weeks and you never rented before, you would qualify for a license. And there may be people out there who have done that. I do know, and I won't mention any names, but I do know in one case, a friend of mine, somebody I know around town, approached me about this as we were going through it, and I advised him if he had any interest in doing it in the future, he should do it. And he went through the process with the state, and he's been doing a little short-term rental to protect his interest. And that's perfectly legal under the framework that, or under the ordinance that we have. But in 2022, it will no longer, unless you're in the exempted area from the cap, that will no longer be in effect. And then we will know how many licenses are out there.
And you know, we did our due diligence with working with the short-term community. I mean, we did everything we possibly could. We listened to everybody that had questions and the whole 9 yards, and some of the things that they suggested that we did actually put into the short-term rental agreement. We really did try to do the very best we could with this.
It's certainly a lot different than what came out is a much better ordinance than what we started with. And I mean, that is the goal of any process, you know, to work through it. But I have to say that a lot of the ordinance that you have today, that we have on the books, is a direct result of all the input that we took from people. You know, there was parts of it that I didn't want to go along with, but or I didn't even think about. But as these suggestions were made to us, they made sense. And
plus,
you know,
we also studied the plans that other towns, our size, maybe a little bit bigger, have implemented, so that we had something to go by and used their experience to try to put ours together as well. So does that satisfy you?
Yes. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, guys.
Anybody else?
You have 3 more here.
Hello. I was just wondering, how are you?
I'm good.
I was just wondering, you know, at the town, you know, meeting, that was the thing in the budget I questioned, and, you know, Werner stood right up and said there'd be 400 to 500. I mean, it's on tape, so you can watch it. And also in some of your paperwork that I read before that, it said 200 and something, and that's what Werner told me in the office. And I don't understand why he's not speaking to this, since he was the one who had said the numbers with authority at the meeting. And also, you know, it's $169,000 a year. Supposedly the $119,000 position is going to be half planning member, half short-term rentals. So are we covering that whole position? Because it seems like that was, you know, how it was presented, that the short-term rentals were going to cover the whole nut. Is that the case? And why isn't Werner speaking about the numbers he spoke of before? Have they changed dramatically somehow?
Robin, we simply don't know the numbers.
So why did you say them?
I have said that we don't know the numbers. You know, I think that we have thrown out some general numbers out there, but we don't have a specific set of numbers, and we will not have a specific set of numbers until everyone has applied within the framework for a license. And I got pretty agitated with people during the lead up to this because they don't listen. And, you know,
I'm listening. I want a number. That's all.
Robin, you aren't listening, because I told you we don't have a number. You are throwing out things that you may have heard, and we have. Yes.
So, Ed,
so let me just talk about the numbers a little bit, if you don't mind. So we did talk a lot throughout the process about what we estimated the numbers to be. And so I think some of the confusion may be tonight you're hearing selectmen say we don't know what the numbers are. And so what I have conveyed to them is, especially with this tier system, tier 1 and tier 2, so 0 to 3 bedrooms and 4+ bedrooms, we don't know how many are going to hit in each category, but we did take some educated guesses on it in coming up with fee scenarios. So I'm going to let Werner talk a little bit about that, because he worked with the software companies mostly when we were developing those estimated numbers of units. The other thing is we have a number of rentals in town that don't use these internet-based, rental engines like Airbnb or VRBO, because we have a long history of rentals, especially down at Goose Rocks Beach. So we have used some estimated numbers for those as well of what we anticipate that could add. But again, we won't know till we know. In regards to the salary and the costs, so what we said is that this is going to require not only time from the planner position, but it's been a lot of time from the town clerk and the code enforcement, police and fire, other administrative costs, including processing fees, the software costs. And so it's not that the costs are all going to be about the planner, but that is some of the costs as well as other staff that are involved in the process. So Werner, do you want to just talk about the estimated numbers?
Sure. Yeah. So I can tell you just, any type of trend, the numbers fluctuate. And so, what we see is that sometimes folks will have a listing that stays on and sometimes the listing comes off and those numbers fluctuate. I've seen numbers, that have, and keeping in mind, these are general numbers that come from, just some of the websites that are, that host. So this is Airbnb, VRBO, the big sites like that. We'll see numbers that are in the, in the low 300s, that then, fluctuate up depending on, the time of year. Some folks, for whatever reason, I think, listings go on, listings go off. But then we also know that we have. And
there are people who do advertise on multiple platforms.
That's correct, yes. And the system takes and accounts for that so that you don't have a duplication of numbers. But we also know that we have properties that don't show up on these sites, that are managed locally. And so I think that's some of the numbers that we don't necessarily have a great handle on, or those types. But, we're certainly in the, we're in the 300s range for sure. We know that, I would say at a minimum, we're in that 300s range. I do think that, because of the interest, we'll see an uptick. We've seen an uptick in numbers for folks, as Ed stated, that are preserving their rights and are registering and listing with some of these different sites.
So, thank you for that information. But another thing I'm asking is, so say, you overestimated how many people are going to sign up. How are you going to address that if you've already set the fee? Like, are you going to charge them, because I don't really think any of us should pay for that, and I don't short-term rent. So, I'm not for or against this, but I am against, not charging them enough, and then we're going to eat it, because that was my whole point at the meeting, that this was a lot of money to pay to manage short-term rentals. So I would like some kind of, so say you charge 300 and then, only 300, sign up. I don't think that covers the cost. So what are you going to do about that?
So Robin, as I said earlier, we've set the fee at $350 and what was it?
Well, we haven't yet, but we're about to.
$325, right? $570. If next year we find that we have an overabundance of money, which who knows, we may, then the fee will go down. Because as Ed said, we're not here to make a profit for the town. We're here to cover costs.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. The cost.
Don't know.
I think Robin's concerned that you might not cover enough of the cost. And what happened?
We had the first lady say that she was upset because she thought the fees were too high. So again, without numbers, this is why why I have suggested this particular fee structure, because I hope, and that's all I can do because I don't have the numbers, that this will cover everything. We'll have contingency and we can cover it if it doesn't. But, aside from that, I cannot give you an answer because a definitive answer doesn't exist, Robin.
So you have contingency fee, like, where does that come from? That's still taxpayer money. You know, that's what I'm asking. So what is your plan if you've not estimated correctly and the cost of managing this?
Robin, do we have to go down all of this tonight? Because there's so many things that the minute details, we've tried to answer your questions, all along here. But I don't think you want an answer, Robin. I think you just want to keep asking questions.
I do. I want to answer. No.
So let me just say this. The revenue for short-term rentals is a revenue line item in the budget, just like all revenues. So building permit fees, we try to make sure that the building permit fees are covering the cost of inspections. And so every year we estimate what that is, but it depends on how many new houses are going to be built and how many porches and additions. We don't necessarily know that. The same with liquor license fees and all these other fees. So we do our best to estimate. The reality is, at the end of the day, some fees may go over. They might generate more income, and some might be under for various reasons. So all those revenues together balance each other out is what our history would show us. One might be higher, one might be lower. I think that we've done the best in estimating what these fees are to cover those costs. That has been the goal. And you can see that we've given the selectmen 3 scenarios, one being the most conservative and one being the most, what's the opposite of conservative? But lenient. Right. And so right now they're picking the middle, but at the end of the day, other revenues, if it came under, would offset those, is what our history of revenue forecasting has shown.
Okay, that's all I was asking. Thank you.
There's one other hand out there.
Great. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Susan. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you guys for this meeting tonight. I apologize. This necessarily isn't a finance-related question, but I wanted to piggyback on something that Ed just brought up. I'm having a little bit of confusion just around, I guess, more of the rules and regulations of the short-term rental. It's my understanding through listening to, many of these meetings that you folks have hosted, as well as reading the ordinance, that you would be able to apply for a license for the 2022 year if you had if you had fulfilled your 14 days, within the 2021 year, 2020 or 2019. And you could not break those 14 days up over years. You'd have to complete 14 days in any of those years. Those 14 days, it's my understanding, can be completed any month throughout the year. I spoke with Werner today via email as well as in person, and he sort of had some hesitation along the lines for anybody that would want to try to fulfill those 14 days, whether that be in November or December of this year. I did not see it anywhere in the ordinance stating that there would be a stipulation on which months that you could fulfill those days. Werner also said that you folks would be looking to potentially put a date in place as to when all of the applications would need to be in by. Again, I don't see that listed in the ordinance anywhere, which would then create a cap. The ordinance states that there would be no cap put in place until 2023. So I'm really just a bit confused, I guess, based off of the communication I'm getting from code enforcement versus what the actual ordinance says. I also had the opportunity to speak with Alan Daggett today. Alan and I seem to be on the same page for how the ordinance is written and how I am sort of conveying it to my clients that I work with in town here. So I wanted to see if somebody could clarify for me. I know that was a lot. Sorry.
Do you want me to speak on this?
Yes.
Yeah, would you, Lori? So,
Susan, Werner has the unfortunate position of being between me and you. So what the reality is Werner is trying to abide by direction he's getting from me, as well as, be responsive to very specific questions. I would agree with your analysis that you can rent any time in calendar year 2021. I think if you rented the last 2 weeks in December in calendar year 2021, you would still meet that criteria. What I'm trying to deal with is the administration of this ordinance, which is very different than the theory of the language. And in order to have, my goal has been to have permits ready to go, the beginning of January. And in order to do that, staff needs some amount of time to process these applications. And so I had met with Jamie and Werner, who were reviewing it and reviewing the implementation team. And I said, we really need to have a deadline of the beginning of December so that we have time to look at each and every application, look at the documentation. I know that some people will have some issue that, we can't foresee sitting here today, or we'll need additional follow-up, or might have problems with the paperwork process. And so we just need that time with my goal in mind of having permits in place in January. So Werner did bring forward your concern. And I said, well, I think there will be few people who will fit in that category. And so my thought process in talking to Werner and Jamie after their implementation meeting today was, those people can submit, that their plan or rental contract or whatever documentation they may have, and understanding that that rental has not yet taken place when they're applying, and that we would follow up with those people throughout the month of December in order to still be ready for January. I also told the selectmen that this was a concern, and Alan told me he talked to you. And I don't disagree with Alan's analysis that the calendar year ends December 31st. It's just, when are we going to be able to process these? I said, if you're going to let people apply on December 31st, I can't have permits on January 1st. So we did discuss whether the permits wouldn't be available until the end of January. My concern there is there will be people who say, well, I can't advertise then because I'll be in violation of the ordinance without a permit once January hits. So I think we're trying to hit both sides in the middle. But that's why we're here tonight, to talk to the selectmen about, the intricacies of this implementation.
Madam Chairman, can we take a vote on the fees? Because I think what Lori's addressing now, we were planning on discussing. Yes, so that we can put this behind us. I don't see any more hands up. So
Okay.
I would like, if that's okay with you, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the fee schedule for the 2022 license would be as follows. Tier 1, as it says here, 0 to 3 bedrooms, $325 per annum. And for Tier 2, which would be 4+ bedrooms, the fee would be $575.
And Alan, I think you already seconded that.
Already seconded.
This is a repeat. All right, so let us take a roll. Pat?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Mike? Mike? No.
Did he leave?
No,
No, muted.
he's muted.
My phone was ringing and I muted myself.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I,
Okay. And Alan?
Aye.
And Sheila says aye. So we have that. All right. And so the next part that we need to discuss is do we not allow new licenses? Do we allow new licenses just in the Goose Rocks Beach area because there is no limit? Or do we open it up totally? And I think
You're talking 2022?
2022. And I think we all agreed, or we, in discussion, we believe that the first year, because it is so new, that we will just take people who have rented in the past. Do you have any of you have anything to say on that?
I think it's a good thing to do.
And we will have to create a waiting list for people, to make it fair and equitable in the future who want licenses. I don't know if we need to discuss that this evening, how the details of that might work, but.
No, we won't need to do that until we get more in the way of numbers.
Yeah, because I know people will in the future want to obtain a license who are not currently renting, or at least have the option to do so.
Do we have any hands? Dave? All right, does somebody want to make a motion?
If I am correct, then I say that we will, I move that we will issue no new licenses in the year 2022 for the year 2022, and that new licensing will proceed in the fall of 2022 for the calendar year of 2023.
I second that.
So you do have a hand up in the audience.
Okay, now we do?
Yeah.
Hi, yes, I just want to clarify the last point around no new rentals and what renting in the past means, and whether that just means 2021.
No, if you read through what we've done in the previous meetings, you are allowed to have rented between the years 219, 220, and 221.
Okay, and 14 days in 2021 would be
14
fine.
days within that year.
Okay, good.
So those properties will be allowed to apply for a license this fall for the calendar year 2022. And what they're saying tonight is that they're not going to add additional new licenses for 2022 until they get a handle on that. And then they determine the cap, and that would go into effect for 2023.
Understood.
Okay. You have another?
Seconded?
Thank you, sir. Just one quick question. Does that mean if there's rental history for this coming year, that those folks automatically, as long as they fit the criteria, they automatically get a permit?
Well, they have to.
They would have to apply.
Yeah, as long as they fit the criteria for this next year, and they've already rented before, so they automatically get a license. I mean, a permit. Sorry.
I mean, they would qualify. Yes. I mean, the word automatic is, throws me a little bit, but yeah, you would qualify for one, so long as you are the owner. If you purchase a house tomorrow and it has rental history, that history doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the previous owner.
So those don't convey?
Correct.
No.
Yeah, there will be no transference of licenses with property. They belong to the ownership of the property, whether it be an individual or a trust or a corporation or whatever legal entity owns it. So basically, just what I'm saying is, if let's say you were listing a property right here, let's say you were listing my house, 134 Main Street, and I had a rental history, and the next person bought it and they didn't rent it out in this year 2021, that's it. It's gone. They'll have to go on the waiting list because it's outside of the Goose Rocks area. Now, if it's in Goose Rocks, they in 2023 would be able to apply and receive a permit because there's no cap in Goose Rocks.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank
I hope
you.
that clarifies it.
Very good. Thank you. We have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
So Okay, Nathan?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks for letting me speak. Just kind of had my question, but I have another question on top of that. I know there's been a lot of questions, and I'm not trying to beat the dead horse here, but I know there's been a lot of questions about the number of licenses that will be issued, in exceeding of that cap. But is there any thought process or formula involved, once you get that baseline for this year?
Point no, because we have no idea what the number will be. Again, speaking for myself.
Right. I didn't know if there was like a percentage, if you guys had a thought process or a formula behind that.
We haven't got that far yet. We really haven't. We need to see what the base number is going to be for this coming year. So we can decide that.
Right, and it may come up 200 or it may come up 500. At this point, we don't know. So that's determined in the future.
Right. No, I completely understand the number, like the numerical standpoint, but I just, never mind. I was just wondering if there was a growth projection or no?
Not as yet.
No growth projection or percentage increase?
Not as yet.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other hands?
Sue Hill did have her hand up, but I don't see it up now. Oh, there she is.
Thank you, Lori. I did just want to thank you guys for sort of having a sidebar discussion about the concerns that I brought up earlier today. I sort of got cut off earlier and didn't have the opportunity to say thank you, so that's all I was doing.
Well, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. And thank you. Susan, you and I had a very extensive conversation while we were working through this ordinance. And for me, it was very refreshing to hear your point of view as somebody who manages short-term rentals and whom I know has an excellent reputation, both you and your mom, for several years. And, it was good to hear the other side of it in a one-on-one conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Have a nice evening.
You too.
So are we ready to vote? All right. This is the motion about no
new licenses in 2022. Yeah.
So Ed.
Aye.
Pat.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Alan.
Aye.
Sheila says aye. So that is that. And just one more thing, the Good Neighbor Guide. I just want to ask if anybody has any changes that they would like to make or take anything out of it, or are we happy with it? And this is not a vote. This is just.
Yes, we do need a vote on that because that will be what applicants certify that they will abide by the Good Neighbor Guidelines.
That's
correct, Werner?
I have no issues with it, Sheila. I think it's fine.
Yeah, that's correct. There is, as part of the application, applicants will have to, check a statement.
All right.
I move we adopt this Good Neighbor Guideline as read or as written. I'm not going to read it out.
All right, and take a vote. Ed?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
Sheila says aye.
So can I ask that, although it wasn't in your packet, is a question that has come up today regarding the application deadline. And so I'm just going to ask Werner and Jamie, who've been working on it, to give you an update on the implementation of the software. But we do need some guidance as to whether you want us to be working towards the goal of January or the end of January. And I don't know if Werner has any more input about, or Jamie, about the processing of the applications, but I'll turn it over to them.
Sure.
We started.
So we've been in.
Started, Warner?
Well, we've been
Warner.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I keep cutting you off. There's a little lag here.
No worries. So we've been in process with host compliance, working through the software, providing them with documents, and things.
They've been working on this since July, just so you know.
Yeah. So where we're at now, I mean, we had a pretty aggressive timeline, that was set forward with a lot of, I think, idealistic goals. And, in our implementation meeting that we had today with host compliance, we were notified that, the online, portal, is going to be open in the beginning of November. Now, I know we've been shooting for, aggressively to try to get this, open in October, but it looks like we're going to be pushed back to the beginning of November for this. We will of course, continue with them, and if we can get this, opened up sooner, we certainly will. But I think for planning purposes, that's where we're at right now.
Warner, how long do you anticipate from the time an application arrives in your office that it will take to process it?
Now that's a good question. Like with any of the applications that we deal with, it's going to really be a matter of how complete the application is. If we have a lot of, if there's missing information or incorrect information or inconsistent information, there's, built into the system, there's the ability to send feedback back to the applicant to say, hey, we're missing this, but, a lot of it's going to be, is your application consistent with the records that we have on the tax card? Have you provided all the information, that's been asked for? All of that information that's there, an application, should be able to be processed relatively quickly. However, I do anticipate that, for this run here, there's information that the town has that, I think it's likely we're going to be getting contacted by property owners looking for that information. And, we'll have to supply that back and forth to them. I can't give you a definitive on how long it's going to take to process an application, because I think it's going to vary.
So what I was looking for, Warner, and I think you've covered that aspect of it pretty well, is if we said, 3 to 4 weeks expected, and not that we can't hold you to this because we're going to get, you're going to get slammed with applications in the beginning. So if we were to say, any application submitted after December 1st, we cannot guarantee that you will have your license by January 1st. That's how a lot of processes that I've dealt with in my business work with. It's kind of a first come, first serve. And yes, if your application isn't complete, well, that's not your office's problem. I won't say problem, but that's not your office's fault or something that you can control. All you can do is kick it back to them and say, hey, we need a little bit more information. Can you please provide these documents?
Yeah.
I thought we extended last month the amount of time that we were going to have to do the implementation. I thought it was 3 months or something. Was I asleep or did I miss something?
Well, I think that was the implementation, Mike. I think now we're just talking about.
Oh, that's right. It's implementation. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the application period we were hoping to have open in October, sometime in October.
Right.
We're saying the application portal, and people will be able to do this all online, will be open at the beginning of November. So the question is, how much time do people need to submit that application? And then how much time is it going to take us to review them? Because the world isn't going to stop at planning codes and clerk. There's going to be building permits and planning board submissions and all of that going on as well. So our goal is to work towards January, and I don't think we have any issue with doing it on an ongoing basis. We were just trying to make sure the majority of applications were in sooner rather than later, so we weren't just prolonging that work and that permit time.
Okay, let me ask a question. So say you don't get the application in till December 31st. So that person should know that they're not going to get their license January 2nd. It's going to take a longer time to get it. But I think they just want to be sure that they can go to December 31st, even though they don't, it's not late. When if it does get into it just may not be processed as soon as somebody that put it in for the 1st of December. It's as simple as that. I don't see any problem with that.
I don't either.
Yeah, from a process perspective, it's, we're going to take these on a first come, first serve, basis. And again, the more complete the information is, the quicker it'll get issued. One of the things that, I'll go ahead and encourage folks now that if you're a property that is on, septic, then one of the things that we're going to want to have, in that application is going to be a copy of your septic system design. So now, in many cases, property owners don't necessarily have that. We have that on record in the code office. That it's also available through an online search engine through the state of Maine. So there's going to be a bit of back and forth of sharing of information. So property owners can be proactive at this point. If they don't have copies of their septic system design, they can reach out to us, and we're happy to scan and email copies of those to them ahead of time, if they want to start, collecting documentation so that part of the process is easier. Likewise, if you're on sewer, there's a request for a copy of your sewer bill, that verifies that as well. Same thing, having a copy of that document ahead of time, will just help expedite the process later on. So I intend to make a list available on the FAQ page that will give a listing of documents that folks are going to need so that they can go ahead and start preparing that ahead of time.
That's
and again, this probably will be this is going to be the most difficult year, because I assume Warner going forward for renewal of a license will be much less onerous on the property owner than it will be in the upfront.
That's correct. As long as,
and hopefully a less onerous on, workload on you and your staff.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, Ed. I think, as long as there haven't been any substantial changes to the property, ownership hasn't changed, no changes to the property, the renewal process should be relatively seamless.
So Lori, are we in agreement that it's going to open on November 1st, but we're hoping that most people apply during the month of November, but if there are people who apply in December, as long as they know they're not going to get their application by January 1.
So Werner and Jamie, would that work for us?
Work for you? I just think 30 days isn't long enough. I think we need to allow the public to have a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, I think that's,
Jamie,
that's a fair statement.
Jamie, we haven't heard from you. We're worried you can't talk anymore.
Well, you're saying everything like so eloquently and kind of taking the words right out of my mouth. So I was letting that. I think that's a fair statement, Sheila. And the one thing that we are being very cognizant of is the people that will be doing their rentals, for Prelude or Thanksgiving or, the season's at the end. And we certainly are not looking to preclude them from the process, and we'll move it as quickly as possible. And I would just reiterate what Werner says, that the more complete the application and the less chasing that we have to do, the faster we can move along and turn it around.
All right.
So you also have a hand up in the audience, just so you know.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, this should be a quick one. essentially, I'm just curious because I've worked with customized software applications before like this. If it's not ready by November 1st or say early November, do you have a contingency plan in place for the application process? And similarly, are you prepared for system outages? You know, should there be like as was mentioned, a significant info dump of applications, all at once?
You said that was going to be a quick one?
I hope so.
That's a staff question, not a selectman question, at least as far as the answer for that goes.
Jamie and Warner, do you want to talk to that?
That's a good, it's a good question. I mean, I think with a lot of things, when you look to hire, somebody to do a job like this, you look to those companies that have the bandwidth and the experience to deal with, these types of issues. You look for kind of proven solutions. So, when we looked at host compliance and looked at other companies, one of the things that we recognize is that the company that we chose to work with, manages communities that are significantly larger than us. And so, where we're dealing, in the grand scheme, we're dealing with, 350 applications. They have clients that have, that carry, thousands of applications. And so, so we feel pretty confident with the company that we've selected on that. Now, as far as a contingency piece of it, Jamie and I have discussed the fact that, while it is not the method that we are, the method in which people need to apply is electronically through the website. However, we have talked about, as a backup, the fact that we may need to create a paper application that would hold the same information, that we are asking for, through the online process.
And that wouldn't hurt to have those 2 paper applications.
And Warner, I'm sure that if in the unforeseen event, or maybe even unfortunate event, I should say, that something like this happened, that the system crashed, or that your office was completely overwhelmed, that, this is not an inflexible process here. The Board of Selectmen certainly can revisit this if there are extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, no, we're here to work with folks, and if we run into substantial issues, I have no issue with communicating that to you all.
Yeah, and we're not here, and I say this to the audience, we're not here to deny anybody who is lawfully entitled to a short-term rental license their due. We'll all have to be patient and work together to get through, especially this initial round of licensing, and it should go a lot smoother after the first year. And we'll have a lot more of those answers that people asked about how many licenses, how many tier 1, how many tier 2, etc.
So I think staff has what we need at this point, but you do have another hand up.
Sorry, I'll make this one really quick. I know Werner mentioned the timeline or the checklist that he said that he's going to provide in the FAQ section, and not trying to rush you, but where the online portal is now going to be available in November. Do you have a timeline for that checklist to help prepare people?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nathan. I suspect we should have that out and available, middle to the end of next week.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Are we good? One more?
He said no more.
Oh, no more. Oh, good. So I think we're done with our voting. Right, Lori?
Yeah.
We're good to move on? Item 9, engineering and final design of infrastructure for village parcel. And That's Eric, I believe.
Yeah, I wanted Eric just to give you an update. At your last meeting, you had agreed to move forward with that. And so Eric has been working with Acorn Engineering, and I just wanted him to give you an update on that timeline.
Yeah, thank you, Lori. So Acorn, we did request from Acorn on a timeline. So none of these are really always clear. So to get to construction level design plans, we'd be looking at February 18th, 2021. 2022, I'm sorry, they said 2021, but obviously it's February 2022 for getting to that level. However, I think the board may be looking for some information prior to that, which I look at it 60% drawings as being quite substantially complete, if you will. It's when the preliminary design has been completed. And that would happen by December 10th, 2021. I don't think the board really needs to have construction level plans at that time to make better decisions. So that is where we are at. I would also recommend that we evaluate, because we're really evaluating some of the costs associated with this, that we evaluate the feasibility of eliminating the pump station. So that I would ask Acorn to evaluate that as part of the process.
Okay.
Eric, can I ask you a question? We keep talking about the pump station. What exactly does the pump station do, and why may or we may not need it?
So the pump station is really the original design of the subdivision was to gather the wastewater from the complete subdivision. And there may have been some decision making in the process because there was obviously plans to have buildings placed in certain locations. They wanted to make sure that they were able to capture the waste without additional pump stations, if you will. However, to build one pump station for this whole for the whole subdivision, it comes with quite a cost to the tune of over $600,000 for the pump station. That's estimated. So we're trying to see if there's a way to get to gravity back to where the existing wastewater is, or where the existing manholes are, if you will, on North Street without having a pump station. So we're trying to eliminate that.
So the pump station, in essence, literally pumps the effluent out to the street is what it would do. And if we have enough pitch, we can gravity feed it to the street.
Effectively, yes. It's pitch gradient. I mean, it's basically, we would be...
The design plans will show us this, whether we can or we can't.
I think as part of this design process, I think it is worthwhile evaluating that aspect of the system.
600,000, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You've answered my question, Eric. I just wanted to, I had an idea, but I wanted to, to have you explain it for those at home, and maybe for a little more clarification for myself and other members of the board.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. And we appreciate your work on this project.
Anybody have any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you, Eric. And I think we're on to other business. Ed?
No, thank you, Sheila. Nothing for me.
Pat?
Nothing for me.
Mike?
No.
Alan?
Nothing. Thank you.
And I have nothing. So Lori, it's all you.
I would just encourage everybody to participate in the comprehensive plan work session on Monday night. You can check the website for more details. And I just want to express my gratitude in working for a great team in a great community. And I'm very, very fortunate.
You're not leaving, are you? That's the next thing I thought you were going to say.
And that's why it's so hard for me.
Yeah. This meeting's over. Adjourn.
And Laurie, the feeling is mutual.
That's right.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very true.
I have had the opportunity to talk with some managers across the state this past week and hear some troubles that people are experiencing.
Mhm.
And when I hear that and hear about their relationships with their boards and communities, I count my blessings.
That's good. We do too.
Yeah. We were
Team.
pretty.
All right. Well, then I'll move the warrants. If Lori's done.
Second.
Second.
All right, taking the roll. Ed?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
It says aye. Somebody?
Motion to adjourn. I was waiting for you to say the motion passes, but motion to adjourn.
Second.
For second, third, fourth.
And Ed?
Aye.
Guess we don't really have to. Pat?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
And I say aye. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and patience, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.